Today, I'm going to show you my top 7 opening traps that you can easily integrate into your repertoire. You don't have to play bad moves and hope your opponent somehow falls for them. No, these are opening traps that you can actually play, and if your opponent falls for them, then you have a nice bonus option. If not, you still continue with a completely normal game and suffer no disadvantages. So let's start with the first opening trap. When you play e4, e5 is a pretty common response. Knight to f3, and yes, your opponent often plays knight to c6. Then you get Italian, Spanish, Scotch, depending on what you want to play. But it can also happen that your opponent plays knight to f6. The Petrov's defense? And yes, you just continue with the best move. Knight takes e5. And yes, if your opponent has a bit of experience, they'll probably play something like d6. But if they're a bit less experienced, they might get the idea. You take one of my pawns, I'll just take it back. And right at that moment, your opponent falls into the Russian trap. And now you just play calmly. Queen to e2, you chase away this knight here. If black thinks, okay, I'll just defend it with a pawn, then you simply attack it with a pawn. So this knight will have to move. And when it moves, we have a really nice discovered attack here. We take advantage of that, attacking the king and the queen in a single move. If the bishop interposes, then we just take the queen. And if the queen interposes, we still just capture the queen. And just like that, we've won the queen in only a few moves. And yeah, probably the game as well. In 6th place, we have the Lasker Trap, which arises after the moves d4, d5. Your opponent plays c4, trying to offer you the queen's gambit, but you don't accept it. Instead, you respond with e5, playing the Albin counter gambit. A somewhat more exotic variation, but one that definitely has its traps. White usually captures this pawn here on e5. Then you play d4. And yes, now there are several moves white could play, but if he plays e3 here, which at first glance looks very natural, we attack the pawn in the center. And if black does nothing and this pawn gets captured, then white actually stands very, very well here. But black has the option to throw in bishop to b4 check. And after bishop to d2, we already pose a very uncomfortable question with, how does he recapture on e3? We attack the bishop and also target a pawn here. And yes, white will most likely think, yeah, this bishop is just hanging. It's an unprotected piece. I'll take it. And at that moment, he falls right into the Lasker Trap. How does it continue? e3 captures on f2, attacking the king and the queen. White simply can't take this pawn, because then he loses his own queen. So king to e2, the only move. And how does it continue now? Yes, now, we mustn't hastily capture the queen or anything like that. Instead, we promote the pawn, but not to a queen, rather to a knight, because we want to deliver this check here. And yes, force white to spend a tempo and capture the knight with the rook. Because now we have bishop to g4, and do you notice something? There's no knight left here that can block the check. That's why we played this in-between move, and yes, white has to move the king. And we calmly capture a queen here. And just like that, in the Albin counter gambit, we've won a queen, after just 9 moves. In 5th place, we have the Noah's Ark Trap, and it begins with e4. You respond with black, e5 to knight f3, knight to c6, bishop to b5. Your opponent is playing the Ruy Lopez, one of the most commonly played openings. And it continues. a6, bishop retreats to a4, d6, all moves that have appeared countless times at every level of play. Here, you capture the pawn. And now white might think, okay, I'll just take back that pawn on d4. But if they do that, they're already falling into the Noah's Ark Trap. How's it continue? Pawn to c5 with great precision attacks the queen. The queen has to move and goes to d5. At first glance, it even looks a bit scary. There's a mate threat on f7, but we counter that with bishop to e6. Then comes an annoying check, bishop to d7, but what do we actually gain now? Because the queen on d5 is still threatening mate again. The Noah's Ark Trap has already sprung, Here c4 is played and whoops, the mate threat is parried and the bishop on b3 can no longer be saved. And just like that, we win a piece after only 11 moves. In fourth place we have the Siberian Trap, which begins after the moves e4. And if you play the Sicilian defense as black, then this might be an option for you. d4 is captured. c3, and we capture the pawn. We're now in the Smith-Morra gambit, and knight takes c3. These are all moves that have appeared quite frequently on the board at many different skill levels, and are simply standard development moves being played here. And now we have the nice additional option of playing knight to g4. And yes, we're now putting pressure on the h2 square with two attackers. There's no immediate threat. The knight here is defending everything nicely. But nonetheless, many players tend to have this reflex. Oh, there's an annoying knight. I'll play h3 now to chase it away. But at exactly this moment, white has fallen into the Siberian Trap. Because what we can do now as black is play knight to d4. And now we have some complications. So if the knight thinks, I can capture a knight here, then white is quickly checkmated. And yeah, what is white actually supposed to do now? The best option for white here is actually to capture that knight. And black will then take the queen with check. Black can capture the knight, of course, but a queen against two minor pieces, this already looks very, very good for black. And this is a nice additional option that black has here, namely the Siberian Trap. We're approaching the top 3, and now we come to the so-called Elephant Trap. We're once again in the Queen's Gambit here. This time we play e6, the classical Queen's Gambit declined. Knight to c3, knight to f6, bishop to g5, knight to d7. We're in the Cambridge Springs variation here. And yes, one might think here the d5 square is attacked twice. It is also defended twice, but this knight here is pinned. So, a free pawn for white. That's what many white players might think here. But this is exactly the moment you've fallen into the trap. What happens next? We simply take this knight here. White thinks, okay, I've won the queen, easy. But the next move is just bishop to b4. And now white will be thinking, oh man, what have I gotten myself into? Because this check is not so easy to deal with. Or rather, there's only one way to defend against it. And that is to give the queen back. Bishop takes, and king takes. And if we count the material here, white has 2 minor pieces while black has 3. In other words, we've won a minor piece in the opening, and white didn't even really know what hit them. And that after just 9 moves with the Elephant Trap. Now let's move on to number 2, and that is the Fishing Pole Trap. So what does it look like again? e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6. You're playing black and once again facing the Rye-Low pairs. You play a3, and this time we're in the exchange variation. D takes on c6, castle kingside, bishop to g4, h3. And now we have the nice additional option with h5. Because now you might think, okay, the bishop is under attack, why didn't we move the bishop away? We just gave it away for free. But no, that's not quite the case. H takes on g5. You can already see here, we've now opened up this rook, and that's going to become very important. The knight is under attack. And if white wants to claim any kind of advantage here, at least formally, then they would have to save that knight. Spoiler, the best option is simply to give the knight back. But then we're doing pretty well with black anyway. That's why most white players who find themselves surprised here will probably go for knight takes e5. And then we play queen to h4. And now we're threatening some very, very unpleasant things. White might still try to prevent a possible checkmate with f3, but we just need to know the next move. g3, now we're threatening queen to h2 or h1 checkmate, and white can no longer stop it. The same applies, by the way, if white thinks about defending here with knight to e1 in this position. We simply play on regardless. Queen to h4, and after f3 or After f4 as well, we still play g3 and threaten this unpleasant checkmate. And now we come to number 1 on my list of favorite opening traps. And yes, that's simply because of the choice of opening. Here we play d4. And against f5, we play bishop to g5. And against f5, spoiler alert, bishop to g5 is actually quite a strong move. That's why we're taking a closer look at it. Black might think, okay, this bishop isn't doing much yet since there's a pawn here. And black might now consider chasing away the bishop with h6. And that's completely fine. However, if black starts getting a bit too greedy here and thinks that he can just trap our bishop like that, well then he's already fallen into my favorite trap in the Dutch opening, because we simply play e3. And yes, the funny thing is, after f takes g3, we've just delivered checkmate here. That means this bishop sacrifice, if we can even call it a sacrifice, works for white here. He can deliver checkmate. And what actually happens if black, in this position, so white plays e3, and black might see this threat and say, I can still play h5 here. Now we have two options here. So first of all, we're attacking this pawn here twice, and it's only defended once. But we can make it even more interesting and play bishop to d6. And we're once again threatening bishop to g6 to deliver checkmate. The best attempt for black here is actually to play d5 now. Finally, giving up material. a4 doesn't work at all here. We can play bishop to g6, king to d7, and knight to f3. We do lose a bishop here, but we're threatening so many things. We're in a significantly better position. The engine already gives a plus 5.7 evaluation here. Really nasty things are being threatened here. And if we go back to this position and black thinks, very naively, I'll just cover this with rook to h6, and I have nothing to worry about. Well then, queen takes h5 check, the rook has to capture. And we have a beautiful checkmate in 8 moves here. And this is my favorite opening trap, which you can easily integrate into your repertoire. I've linked 2 here now, feel free to click on them. And then we'll see each other again in the next translated Neoplych video.